Welcome back to the channel. My name is Crawford. This is Virginia's for Lowriders, and we don't just build lowriders here. Keep that in mind. Subscribe. Check out all the builds. Today, we're doing something that, to a person that fabricates all the time, this is very simple. But to somebody that has never made one before, and they're new to the fabrication world, they want to build a first mini truck, they want to build their first race car, whatever. Tabs are on everything. Tabs are on anything in the custom world that you can think of. So today we're going to be replicating some tabs. I purchased these off eBay for my Mazda project. I've been running into some issues with Instant Center, and I'm trying to correct that. And the way I came up with correcting that, and my friend and I came up with the way of correcting that, was taking this, replicating it, and making it an inch longer. So we're going to be going through very simple, like basic hand tools only are required to make these, and you can make them to where you can replicate them over and over and over to where they are exactly the same with no variations, and everything looks great as if you purchased, again, something from somebody with a plasma table. We're going to take it from a simple cardboard template and turn it into a usable part. To do this, the only things that are required would be a hole saw, a drill bit, and a grinder. You can get away with all of those things, those simple everyday tools. Like, if you don't have those simple tools, maybe fabrication's not the best thing to be doing just yet, because those things are pretty much required to do most fabrication stuff. But anyways, let's get into it. We're gonna go over the cardboard portion of this. We're gonna go over the template that I made. I'm gonna give you another example of what I do also. This would be something that I made up in order to make this with a plasma cutter, to where you can replicate this over and over and over. But we're gonna go over all of that. Stick around, subscribe. I'm rambling. Let's get into it. For the things that I had mentioned, I have a couple examples here of what I'm talking about. This is a 2 3/4 inch hole saw. That is a 2 3/4 inch rear end in the truck. So you need to match whatever you're building your tab for in a hole saw size. So I have a couple different styles here. It doesn't really matter. These are very cheap on Amazon. You can buy an entire kit of them for like 60 bucks. These are like $20 a piece without the arbor. So to do it on the cheap, the Amazon one might be the way to go. These are tungsten carbide tipped, and supposedly they're supposed to hold up way longer than these. I'm just trying them out. 2 3/4 inch. I have a tab that fits 2 3/4 inch. So you need to have a hole saw that is 2 3/4 inch. Or if you were going with this 1 1/4 inch bar, you need a 1 1/4 inch hole saw to get the radius correct. This is the most simple way that I can explain how to draw, if you don't have a tab to judge it off of, how to draw the tab and get your measurements correct. So you need to know the height, of course, which would be from the mounting surface of the tab to the top of the tab. Those 2 points are your first thing you need to figure out. After that, you need to know the diameter of the bushing that goes in the 4-link end, or whatever you're using, shock end, whatever it is that you're making this tab for, you need to know this outside diameter. On this case, I already had a tab to roughly judge everything by. I knew this tab would work perfect, just needed to be a little bit longer, and I can go from there. But you need to know this diameter, because this tab needs to cover that bushing completely. If it doesn't cover the bushing completely, you run the risk of the bushing getting bound and cut on the edges of this, plus it looks like crap. So now that you know this measurement and this diameter, you can take that and measure out your distance, and you can figure out the center hole where that needs to land. take this, measure this out. So basically, you can take that, draw you a line across the bottom of here. And let's say your tab needed to be roughly this tall. You can draw roughly that shape. All you're doing from there is filling in the gaps. So this is roughly, I should have put the camera on the tripod, but it's cool. So roughly, you get the idea. That's your size. You put this guy up here, mark the middle, and that's your really ugly, roughly sketched tab. But you get the idea if you take your time and you add a little bit of girth on the end. You don't want to go crazy with it and make it like that big. I mean, you could, but it'd be kind of weird looking. So now that you have your rough idea of that, you transfer it into something this is cardstock. It is temporary flooring. You can get a whole roll of it at Home Depot pretty cheap. Transfer it into something that you can hold on to. That way you can replicate this later on down the road. So this is what we'll be using in order to make the tabs. It's thicker than the material that I got the other tabs made out of off of eBay. If you lay this guy on here and you drew this radius and you flip it over and drew the radius over here, cutting that single hole one time, you're getting that radius for 2 tabs at the same time. So you're cutting your work in half, plus you won't have to clean up this edge at all because the hole saw will make a clean enough pass through there, and it's already the right size, so it's ready to go. So my camera died, so I figured I'd throw this in there along with everything else. Whenever everything's ground down and I'm ready to do all of the finish work with the grinder, I'll go through and weld these up on the edges after everything's roughly pretty much done. And then while they're all together, I will drill my hole down through the center of all of them all at once. That way I don't have to try to measure this out and get this hole exactly the same every single time. It's easier to drill all of them at the same time. So one of the other options that I do, which I'm not much of a fan of, and a lot of people do it this way, but you would make a blank that is slightly undersized to the tab that you're trying to have as a finished product. That way, whenever you go around the edge of this with your plasma cutter you figure it doesn't cut directly in the center. It is spaced out just a little bit. In my case, my plasma cutter is about 1/8 of an inch. So I made this about 1/8 of an inch smaller. That way when I trace the outside of it, it cuts out a tab that is 1/8 of an inch larger. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I can show you very simply. So I'll do a quick me making this with the bandsaw and cleaning it up, just so you can see the step-by-step of this, and then I'll show you an example of me cutting this tab out. As you could see in that video, I laid this up there, snapped on there with a pair of vice grips, traced around the edge of it with the plasma cutter, and that's how I got my 1/8 of an inch. So when this is on here, which it's a little bit more complicated to get these bottom edges when you're dealing with a blank that's this small. You can get it perfect. I don't really care for this way of going about it just because of the amount of cleanup that you have to do. I feel like with a grinder, straight cuts are very, very simple, and the hole saw method makes this radius to where you don't have to grind it at all. This is the finished product from the hole saw, ready to go, 2 3/4, exactly what I need it to be, and it's done. This gets a little complicated, and you got to spend a lot of time grinding that bottom edge, which I don't care for. Also, my plasma cutter is kind of a piece of crap, so that kind of adds to it. But here is the piece that it was cut out of, and again, by tracing this, the very simple, easy way of doing this, just a lot more cleanup. I like this method much more.